everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we kick this off, I would like to point out that we welcome questions. So during today's fireside chat discussion, please ask questions, post them in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, and we'll address those at the conclusion of today's discussion. So I'd now like to turn this over to Steven Saltzstein, Force Family Office's CEO.
Thank you, Callie, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. We have a really important discussion that touches ovarian cancer and touches a number of things that Allarity is focused on that really are helping thousands of people across America, or hopefully will be helping thousands of people across America. Just to give you a sense, and I always like to start these discussions with the people, with the patients. There are 19,000 new ovarian cancer diagnoses every year, and there's 13,000 deaths. And nothing else we're going to say today is as important as that statistic, other than we have a battle-tested, amazing CEO, Thomas Jensen, who is a brilliant scientist, founded this company, then left for greener pastures, only to have Thomas, I hope this doesn't upset you, but the old management team basically, they didn't do a great job. They did a terrible job. They left the company in ashes. And like a phoenix, you took the reins, got the company, their next trial fully funded, raised a ton of capital, and have absolutely righted this ship. And, it's so rare to find a battle-tested CEO such as yourself. So, first I want to say congratulations and, thank you for continuing on the path. Let me ask you a question. Why did you come back? What made you come back?
Yeah, so thanks for that, Stephen. And good question. I did keep in touch because I did co-found the company 20 years ago with my then professor, and I think we've built an amazing technology that deserves a place. And as you touch upon, what is most important is the patients. And I really believe that we have an amazing technology that can help make a big difference, and also in Stenoprib, a really unique asset. And I would hate to see that at the scrapyard. And I thought that let me come back in and see if I can right the ship, because it really deserves a decent shot on goal. I think I wasn't ready to throw in the towel and say that's it. So
yeah, great. So do me a favor, just for everyone's edification, tell us what the company does. You have the ovarian program. You also have DRP. So just give us a synopsis of what the company does.
Yeah. So we founded the company based on the drug response predictor platform, the DRP, which is a multi-gene expression signature that enables us to take a tumor, a biopsy from a patient, and then basically use that biopsy to decide whether or not a patient should enroll in a treatment or not. We use it as for right now for our own in-licensed drug, Stenoprib. We take a biopsy of the tumor and analyze it in our lab. And the DRP gives you a score between 0 and 100. And the higher the score, the more likely you are to respond to a given treatment. So it can be used for selecting patients, or also on the other end of the scale for saying this patient should not be enrolled in a clinical trial. It can be used for our drugs, but we have DRPs for more than 100 different anti-cancer drugs. So it can be used in a variety of drugs.
So your drug, Stenoprib, is that how I say it? Stenoprib?
Yep.
Yeah. So what percent of the patients have a DRP response that will hopefully be helped by Stenoprib?
So in the trial, we are still gathering data from around 70% of the patients that went into the screening program was positive, DRP positive, and ended up going into the trial. So So we also have it's not this drug is it's a very interesting asset. Let me put it like that. Very interesting drug because it's not as with some technologies where you only enroll 5% for treatment. So I mean it's a large chunk of the patient population that are enrolled.
So what gave you the idea for DRP and then stenoporiv?
So the idea for DRP came out of that we were at the Technical University of Denmark, and we saw that we could, based on these cell line data from National Cancer Institute, we could predict outcomes using these cell lines. We could predict outcomes to anti-cancer therapies. And then we founded the company, and then we did a collaboration with AstraZeneca back in 2010, where they sent us biopsies from their drug fulvestrant, which is first-line metastatic breast cancer drug, and we showed that we could get the response rate from less than 50 up to 88% of response rate for that drug if they used our technology before treatment. And then we were very happy, but AstraZeneca turned down collaborating with us. And keep in mind, this was in 2010. A lot have happened since. But they turned down a collaboration with us, and we wondered why. But when you own the market as they did with that drug, why would they be interested in having a smaller piece of the pie, so to say? So that gave us the idea that in order for us to show that this technology deserves a place, we need to in-license our own assets. And then we started the search for assets that had shown efficacy, but not enough to beat golden standard. And during we in-licensed a variety of assets, whereas we saw on Eisai is a Japanese pharmaceutical company developed stenoporiv, and we saw based on their own phase 1 data that we could pick the responding patients among what they published. So that was how we in-licensed stenoporiv.
And just to lend credibility to the company, so you guys recently beefed up. You brought in the former president from Novo Nordisk US, right? You got someone veteran from Eli Lilly and Celgene, and then Jeremy, you joined. You were a research fellow at Eli Lilly, and now you're chief development officer. What was your motivation? Why join the company?
Well, I was asked to join the company by one of the board members to come in and help assess where the company was going clinically and what assets had the greatest chance of success, both clinically, of course, and from a commercial standpoint. I had come from an ovarian cancer background. As you put it, I was at Lilly, and I have been for the last 10 years in biotech in different C-suite roles, but deeply into ovarian cancer anyway. And when I was able to dig into the data for stenoporiv, it was pretty clear that this drug has legs. And what I mean by that is that the drug was showing clinical benefit that was, I think, far beyond what we might have expected in patients that were really deeply and heavily pretreated. These are patients who have been wrestling with cancer for a long time. They've been through quite a lot already. Very often, that's where we have to start in cancer drug clinical development. The problem is those patients often are so deeply progressed, they're hard to provide benefit to. And yet, when I opened up the covers to this particular drug and the clinical data that were emerging in the study that we're still actively treating patients on, it was very obvious that we were having clinical benefit that was worth continuing to explore more deeply. Really benefit that's way beyond what you typically expect for patients that have had 6, 7, 8 lines of prior treatment. So to me, that, to some extent, it's similar and parallel to the way Thomas talked about his involvement coming back. This drug deserves a shot. This drug has legs. This drug has benefit. We are now obligated, in my mind, to find the right opportunity for this drug in the right ovarian cancer patients and maybe patients that have other cancers beyond ovarian. We have begun to appreciate a little more deeply how this drug really works. And it's different than other PARP inhibitors that are currently used in the ovarian cancer landscape. And I think different in a way that's very meaningful. It inhibits another target. And in fact, the target that's involved in a key pathway called the Wnt pathway that we were trying to drug when I was at Lilly. We were trying to drug it for 10 years. the entire pharma industry has been trying to drug this pathway without really any success. Here we are as we start to evaluate this drug and what it can do and what it is doing in the clinic and understanding how it's working. And maybe we've got the first Wnt pathway inhibitor to delve deeply into the clinical development route.
So Jeremy, why do you think it works? What's going on here? Can you talk about the mechanism of action?
Yeah, so PARP inhibitors themselves are useful in ovarian cancer. That's how stenopurib began its life with the large pharmaceutical company in Japan called Eisai. That's the company from whom we in-licensed the drug. So it began its life known as a PARP inhibitor. And so as a consequence, it was following other PARP inhibitors that were a little further ahead in development. Those PARP inhibitors have been remarkably successful at helping women with ovarian cancer in particular extend their lives with the disease. But those first generation PARP inhibitors have a problem with some toxicity. Unfortunately, many cancer drugs have problems with toxicity. And so women often have to discontinue or dose reduce when they're taking the drug, or it may lead to other side effects that are undesirable. What we've understood with stenopurib, looking at its data, it is a PARP inhibitor for sure, but it isn't creating the same toxicities. In fact, it looks more mild in our hands with the current data sets we have than the other PARP inhibitors. On top of that, it happens to have this second activity on the Wnt pathway. And as it turns out, the PARP pathways and Wnt pathways interdigitate, they intertwine, and they work effectively together within cancer cells. So the PARP pathway repairs DNA damage. The Wnt pathway actually can influence those DNA damage repair pathways too. So with one drug now, with stenopurib, we inhibit two different pathways. And those pathways, when they're both inhibited at the same time, complement each other to lead to the death of the cancer cell selectively. That's what we think is going on. That's the mechanism we're trying to explore more deeply as we carry this drug further into clinical development. And that's what makes it different than every other PARP inhibitor that's in front of it.
Because of the dual pathway.
Yep, exactly.
And then, Jeremy, you were just hinting at the possibility that it's actually a platform technology and can affect other cancers.
Yeah, the Wnt pathway is one of these pathways we've known to be activated in a wide variety of cancers. In colorectal cancers, for instance, which are very common, unfortunately, about 70 to 80% of colorectal cancers turn on the Wnt pathway. Many carcinomas or cancers of epithelial tissue turn on the Wnt pathway as they progress and as they become chemo and radio resistant. We think there's evidence that as ovarian cancers in particular become resistant to platinums, which are the standard chemotherapy used for ovarian cancer, they turn on the Wnt pathway, and in doing so, enable the cells to survive even in the presence of platinum. So if we cut off the Wnt pathway access with this drug, we should restore sensitivity to these cancers, and we can more readily expect to kill these cancers selectively. So that's really why, from a mechanistic standpoint, we're very excited. It is a different kind of PARP inhibitor than has previously been used, and we know those other PARP inhibitors are very effective, even though they had some issues. We think this particular drug, stenopurib, doesn't have those same issues, and in addition, adds this extra pathway to its inhibitory activity that's critically important. And now, Wnt pathway involvement in colorectal and lung, in all sorts of different kinds of cancer. So it allows you to imagine using this drug in indications beyond ovarian cancer.
And can you talk about your phase 2? How far along are these patients? How many patients, et cetera?
So we will release these data later on this year at one of the bigger conferences, and that will save the details for that conference. That's really when we have to release it. Otherwise, we violate the embargo policies of these conferences. But what I can say is that, in many cases, these patients have had 6, 7, 8 prior lines of therapy. They're resistant already to platinum, which might indicate that their cancers have turned on the Wnt pathway. They typically would expect to maybe stay on a drug and maybe even only have a lifespan of 3 to 4 months. And yet we've got patients on this drug continuously without any other drugs. It's a monotherapy for well more than a year. So we're now out beyond 14, 16 months with a couple of our patients, which is really remarkable given how heavily pretreated they are. The other thing that we've talked about a bit in the public domain is that we have activity in patients where PARP inhibitors typically work. Patients who have other defects in DNA repair, specifically a BRCA1 mutation. We know those are the patients that typically do the best on PARP inhibitors. So we see activity there and good clinical benefit. But what's remarkable about this drug, and probably speaks to other activity on the Wnt pathway, is we're getting activity in ovarian patients who do not have that mutation, who do not have defects in other DNA repair pathways. And that's critically important because those patients normally don't have any chance of benefiting from a PARP inhibitor. So now we're exploring the prospect that
So
patients
what do
who
you
would
think,
normally
is that the Wnt pathway then? Is that like the, what?
Well, that's what we suspect. We suspect the Wnt pathway is deeply involved, and there is literature that suggests when you inhibit the Wnt pathway, that alone compromises the DNA repair effectiveness of the cancer cell. So it almost creates a BRCA mutant-like state, or can, in some ovarian cancers, and therefore you almost have a synthetic lethal drug in a singular pill, which is really remarkable. And it might help us understand and appreciate the clinical data we are seeing.
Thomas, you know, I have to imagine, because it seems very promising, although, you know, it's early days, but I have to imagine if you guys have good phase 2 data, that a number of large pharma, you know, would want to come in and do some sort of deal with you. What's your thought process on, you know, taking this drug into phase 3, taking it to approval? What's your thesis here?
So, well, I think you're absolutely right. Off the bat, I think it's an option to go all the way forward ourselves, and I wouldn't be shy doing that. But that being said, I'm sure there are others that have already have that all that apparatus set up and ready to go with that. So it would be prudent to take those discussions and then decide what the best path forward is. Let's keep all options open and as you say, if the data continues to mature as we expect, I think we will have a wide variety of discussions.
So, Jeremy, this is an absolute. I'm about to show that I don't even have a associate's degree in biology, but why is this a monotherapy? And so, are you saying it can't be used in a combination therapy at all? It has to be a monotherapy?
Not at all. I think it's important to provide this distinction. A lot of times when we develop cancer drugs, we develop them as single therapies, as monotherapies, so that we can isolate and understand the effect of that drug.
Okay.
It's nice and very common, of course, to combine cancer drugs because we often want to deploy different mechanisms of action against a cancer so that we have a better chance of killing off the cancer cells. Multiple different mechanisms help us do that. You might liken that to killing off a bacterial population. You're going to use different drugs to wipe out the population and get over an infection. So it might be similar, but the importance for us and the importance for the investor community is we have monotherapy activity. It shows that the drug by itself has clinical efficacy, clinical benefit. The fact that we're very safe relative to what historically the PARP inhibitors show gives us the opportunity to combine this drug. And there's certainly plenty of literature out there, for instance, suggesting that a combination with another commonly used cancer drug like temozolomide could be useful. Right? That could be a step we take, and our safety profile allows us to think about doing that. But our current focus is to explore the monotherapy activity of this drug because it does seem to be profoundly active. And so we're very interested in that by itself. But it certainly could blossom into combination studies as we continue to evolve our thinking around the molecule itself.
What about your patent portfolio? Can you talk about it a bit?
I can, unless Thomas wants to jump in and
Go ahead.
talk about it a bit.
Go ahead, Jeremy. You're welcome.
Well, I think so. So as any good company would, we want to have a variety of patents to protect our intellectual property, and we do have that. I think one of the strongest patents that we could imagine having, and that we were just awarded in Europe and that we're hoping soon will be awarded in the US, is a patent that allows us to couple the use of our DRP technology, the gene expression signature for stenoporiv, to the selection of patients who will get stenoporiv. So we use the DRP to identify the patients who would get benefit from stenoporiv. That allows us to add those patients to our trials or to the treatment with stenoporiv, and ideally see a stronger clinical benefit rate, if you will, in those patients because they've already been pre-selected for that. Now, if we are successful in that endeavor, the label from the FDA would say stenoporiv is approved in patients that have a DRP signature of X. That restriction there would give us the ideal patent protection for this molecule and the companion diagnostic that goes with it for many, many years. So we're excited about that prospect, and we're obviously looking to continue to solidify the use of DRP to find the right patients for this drug, not only because that's the right thing to do for the patients, but it actually helps us quite a bit from an IP standpoint as well, from a patent portfolio standpoint.
So can you talk about the mechanism on a human level? Meaning, is the advantage of stenoporob that a patient can stay on it longer with, let's just say, less side effects, and so that's why it's so effective?
That's one advantage. Absolutely. A patient, in the original PARP inhibitors, patients often have to reduce the amount of drug they take, or they have to take a dose holiday. They stop taking drug for a while to get over the side effects. In fact, those original PARP inhibitors were withdrawn at the request of the FDA in later stage ovarian cancer patients because the side effect profile and there's a variety of complications that led to this, but it really didn't play out in longer survival for those patients who were taking those PARP inhibitors. So the FDA forced withdrawal of those drugs in the later stage patient population where we currently are now. Those drugs exist in the earlier patient populations in a maintenance setting after the use of platinum, for instance. But I think what we're really able to say is these patients could stay on the drug for a longer amount of time. They could get the therapeutic benefit of the drug more consistently then. In addition, because the drug works in two different ways that are complementary, it has a chance to work in patients where it wouldn't otherwise work. And we're seeing that in our clinical trials now. So I think all of that together gives us great excitement and enthusiasm for continuing to develop stenoporob in this space.
Jeremy, can you talk about DRP, drug response predictor, as kind of a platform for identifying molecules, and what can you accomplish with it going forward?
Thomas, do you want to take that one? Thomas was one of the founders for the DRP technology.
Go ahead. He asked you, so I think you should.
Fair enough.
Thomas, sorry, I apologize.
No, either way is fine. So I'll take a shot at it, and Thomas can complement what I say if he wants. But basically, the idea that we're all searching for in the cancer therapy field is to find patients who would benefit from our drugs and to make sure that we don't add patients who wouldn't get benefit from our drugs. We want to get to just the patients who really get the greatest benefit, because those are the patients that's where we're going to find our greatest success with the drug and provide the greatest success for the patients. What the DRP does for us, because it's a very complex gene signature that is derived for any given drug, it allows us to understand and really reflect the complexity of the biology of a cancer. So we now know through the last 20 plus years of deep sequencing and all this other high-end technology that one ovarian cancer is not the same as the next, is not the same as the next, is not the same as the next. There are distinct differences, even amongst cancers ostensibly of the same histology. And so we really need to do a better job and go beyond histology as the basis for treatment and go to exactly what the patient's tumor is telling us. And we can understand what the tumor is telling us by looking at the gene expression profile. Once we appreciate what the right profile is to enable a patient to get success from our drug, applying that technology, that companion diagnostic test to identify those patients, put them on our drug, I think gives us the greatest chance to really help the most patients. Now, as a platform,
You want to answer? You want to add anything, Thomas?
Yeah, well, that I think we could add that, as I said initially, also that this works for a wide variety of drugs. So as long as there's an intracellular effect of the drug, we should, in principle, be able to build a DRP. We have patents for more than 100 different anti-cancer drugs in that space. So it's definitely something that opens other possibilities as a platform technology, of course.
So, Stephen, as a platform, what it allows us to do is look at any given drug, come up with a signature for that specific drug, as we have done with stenoporob, and apply it to help develop that drug, to help it find the right patients. That's really the holy grail in cancer drug development, is to really be able to hone in on the right patients and to ultimately be able to do it without relying upon where the cancer originally came from, whether it was colon, ovarian, breast, lung. We want to make that less of a factor and understand at a deep molecular level what's really going on with the tumor and what it should really be treated with. DRP opens the door for us to be able to do that for many, many different drugs.
Thomas, what is the outlook what is the outlook for Allarity over the next year or two?
Well, first and foremost, it's getting the final green light from the FDA for the for the next part of the clinical trial for stenography in the ovarian cancer space, and then do our best to get as many patients enrolled as possible, so we can come out with some meaningful clinical data. And I think one of the challenges companies like ours struggle with when setting up a clinical trial is patient enrollment. Of course, that's the elephant in the room everywhere. But because of these clinical investigators, the treating physicians that are part of this trial that has helped us with the protocol, they are also very encouraged by the data and are also eager to get going in the next leg of this clinical trial. We saw them pick up pace when they saw the data that came out of the first leg of the trial. We are very encouraged that we will enroll a lot of patients fast.
There are a lot of audience questions, and I'd like to go to those audience questions. Yeah. I just want you to talk, Thomas, just for a minute so that everyone really understands the depth of what a great executive you are. Can you just talk about, okay, you founded the company, you put it on good standing, the old management team didn't execute, it really kind of crashed, so to speak, but then you came back in. And I would love for you to just take a minute and tell people, you came back in, what did you do? And how did you right the ship and get the company healthy again?
Yeah, so I can try to do that fast. There's a lot of work done.
Well, you don't have, take your time. You don't have to be fast.
So I took over in December of 2023. We had less than $100,000 on our bank account. We had a debt of more than $20 million. We had 2 NASDAQ deficiencies, shareholder equity and bid price. We had common shares outstanding, but we had also Series A preferred shares, Series B preferred shares with reset provisions. So no matter how much the share price fell, they just got even more shares. We had 2 different warrant structures on top of that. And we spent $1.4 million per month on various clinical programs that may or may not have been shareholder value driven, or that would give short-term value, shareholder value increase. So since then, we have it was very important for me to say, okay, in order for us to get out of this, we cannot do any more toxic financings. We have to, at the same time we do this, we have to also, I wouldn't say be picky, but be prudent in what we can accept going forward, because we need to get to a better spot, a better place. We cannot do this and end up being at the exact same place a year from now. So,
right.
fast forward a year from that, we have we only have common shares outstanding. We have raised more than $40 million. We are in full compliance with NASDAQ. We have cut the burn from $1.4 million down to $500,000 per month as base cost. And then, of course, once we start enrolling patients, that will come on top of that. And I think we have a very good future now because of only common shares, and people can see that we execute. We have informed the market where we wanted to go, and we are almost ready with the FDA green light. So as we said in the last press release, we hope to have patients enrolled in the first half of this year. So we've done a lot of behind the scenes work to also, the proof is in the pudding. Now we've shown that we can turn around a company, but now we also need to take it the next step forward with delivering on the clinical program. And that's what
You know-
we are really set out to do now.
So you are both incredibly qualified, but I love the fact that you are both motivated first by giving this drug a chance, and therefore, giving women with ovarian cancer a chance. And, there's no better motivation than that. So I applaud you. With that said, Callie, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So what percent of the shareholder base remained with the new management team?
The new management team has around 8.5% of shares, but those are grants giving the next 3 years. So currently all is in the hands of shareholders. There are none that sits that are granted, but or that there are given, but they are not vested yet to management.
Thank you. And is there a timeline for SEC resolution? Any big issues remaining?
When we send out the press release that it's a settlement in principle, and to the best of our understanding and our legal understanding is that pretty much defines what goes into the final documents. Because of the changes in administration, it might take some time to get the final deal documents signed, but we do not expect any changes to happen, and we expect it to happen timely. So I cannot give any time horizons, but I expect it to happen within the not too distant future, for sure.
And can you talk about the institutional holdings percentage?
Currently, there are none. Currently there is, if there is any, it's very little. It's primarily retail.
Thank you. Was stenoparib discovered through DRP?
We in-licensed stenoparib based on our DRP analysis of the drug. So we developed a DRP for it based on the publicly available data. And when we saw that Eisai, they shelved the drug because their decision at that time was to not pursue any oncology assets. They wanted out of oncology. Then they shelved this drug, and we approached them because in the, albeit small, but it was a phase 1 study, we could predict which patients responded to the drug and which didn't. So we discovered the drug, and we got the good feelings for it based on the DRP.
Thank you. Can you speak a bit more as to the significance of the biopsy protocol?
I will try to answer that. I'm not sure I completely understand the question. If not, please ask again. But I think it is, as Jeremy also touched upon, it's very important that you can have intelligent tools to guide treatment options. And what the hospital does anyways with a biopsy when they extract it is they paraffin embed the biopsy and formalin fix it and store it. So we do not, nothing extra is required for us to get to make a DRP score. The hospital does this anyway, and we require a small fraction of the biopsy they already extract from the patient, and then they send it to our lab, and within days we come back with an answer of whether this patient should be enrolled or not.
You reported a 70% positive response rate in phase 2. Could you break down that response rate specifically? Did you see any complete responses, and how many partial responses were there?
I
I
think there was a mistake there.
70%, yeah, I said the 70% of the patients that we screened with the DRP tool ended up enrolling in the trial. This is different from the response rate. When we talk response rates, we normally talk about about a patient, whether or not a patient has any benefit from the drug. But Jeremy, do you want to add anything to this?
No, I think it's important. I think it is that 70% of the patients who otherwise could have gotten onto the trial were enrolled based upon their DRP score. They were eligible based upon the gene score predictor. I think it is important, and we have reported that we have a complete confirmed response on this trial. And in patients that had previously been treated with PARP inhibitors in prior studies, not our studies, prior studies that were published, there had not been a complete response ever reported. So that experience for us is different, and I think very nice to see with stenoporiv, and may reflect its unique mechanism of action.
In your discussions with the FDA, do you anticipate receiving orphan or fast track designation, especially given the niche you're targeting and the extreme unmet need in this patient population?
I think as we have continued to look at the data and the data has continued to mature, it becomes obvious that there are multiple potential advantaged regulatory pathways. We could take orphan drug as maybe one of them. So we'll be exploring that this year to see what is the appropriate path for us to take, but that there certainly are opportunities in that space that we have to go after.
And regarding your DRP platform, do you anticipate it becoming a near-term revenue generator? Additionally, are you considering leveraging AI to expand the platform's capability and broaden its market appeal?
On the first part of the question, it is already generating revenue for us, as we previously has informed the market. We do have some fee-for-service contracts for people using our lab to not only get gene expression services, but also DRP services. Of course, considering AI for everything is very important, and I think it's a very powerful tool. Well, that being said, is that we do have a limited sized team. We have limited funds, and this is again one of the things is that let's do what we do very well, and not with a technology like this, with a drug like this, we could be everywhere and do this and this and this and spend a lot of money. We do have a platform that works very well. We have a DRP that works very well. We have a very good drug. And I think that's very important to recognize. Of course, adding on additional things to make it stronger is also important, but that is not there's no immediate need for that before we secure additional financings, because right now it is about making sure we have enough money to treat these patients. And then who knows what happens if we go and secure funds. We might start a collaboration or explore opportunities of funding this, but it's not on the table just now. But of course, it's an option that is a discussion-worthy subject.
Technology developed by Allarity is phenomenal. Two-part question. Does the company plan to launch a diagnostic test to personalize cancer therapy? And the second part is, how do you plan to navigate the reimbursement landscape for such a diagnostic test?
On the first part, again, we have no immediate thoughts of issuing such a test, but of course, once we get further in our development and come on more solid footing, it's one of those things. It was one of the things we initially thought about doing when we developed the DRP platform many years ago. So it's absolutely something that is worth considering going forward. It's something that's very dear to my heart to explore. And on the reimbursement program, Jeremy, do you want to say a few words there?
Well, I think when you have a diagnostic that is what we consider to be a companion diagnostic, meaning it's a companion to a drug, the reimbursement is folded into the drug's approval and usage. And we've seen that routinely with more of the genetically based single mutation-based programs that allow for the use of certain drugs as a companion and certain companion diagnostics. So there, we have I think a fantastic technology. We're solidifying what the technology tells us, and we take this forward. The idea is to take DRP forward as a companion diagnostic or CDX so that it marries up with the drug at the exact same time, and we get approval for both simultaneously, and therefore usage for both simultaneously. Again, if we do this correctly, we do this ideally, we get approval for the drug in patients who are DRP positive. So those two things are forever linked together. And that forever linkage includes its reimbursement, it includes its usage, it includes its IP status, and everything wrapped into one.
Thank you. I'm pleased to see you've improved the capital structure by suspending the ATM and eliminating warrants, which is a significant change from the previous leaderships. Given that you've indicated you're fully funded into 2026, how do you plan to continue preserving shareholder value? And do you foresee any near-term dilution, or would you wait for major data readouts and potential higher valuation before considering additional capital raise?
So I think we do think we have a very interesting drug. We have a very good technology. And we trust that we will get very good data when we are a year from now. That being said, beggars can't be choosers. And by that, I mean that I don't want to be a year from now and see us try to get just on the brink of very good data, but need to do a financing round and then end up doing a bad financing round. It depends on how fast we enroll patients, how far. One thing is the base cost, but the other thing is how fast do we enroll patients. That will guide our decision for raising additional capital. I fully agree that raising capital at a much higher valuation that this makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, I think the goal we should all have in sight here is long-term shareholder value. It's not going to be driven by whether we do a financing 3 months from now or 6 months from now. I look at a much longer picture for creating long-term shareholder value, and this includes doing non-toxic deals that are on very company and thereby investor-friendly terms secondarily. And that means I cannot wait until the last minute to raise capital, and I have to prepare for delays, even though I don't expect any. So I have to be prudent in my efforts to raise capital.
And how much money do you need to get this drug through approval?
So if we take a drug like Allarity, which is it's an ADC in the same space as ours, it got an approval of 120 patients. If we lay in the slipstream of what they did, that means we also need 120 patients, and we calculate sort of back on the napkin $250,000 per patient to get through clinical trial. So that's the numbers I would give. Jeremy, do you have anything to add to that on what we could?
No, I think that's well articulated. The first basis is we generally see in an efficacy trial about a $250,000 per patient cost. And then, as you said, Allarity, which was the most recently approved drug in advanced ovarian cancer, was approved on an accelerated basis in a patient grouping of about 120 patients. So you can do that simple math to understand what it would take if we have an accelerated path in front of us. And that's in fact what we're hoping to be able to see, some sort of an advantaged regulatory path versus a standard kind of path with a large phase 3 randomized with 400 patients in each arm. That would be a much more expensive trial, obviously. So it really is predicated on our the data that will emerge as this trial continues forward and as we continue to get experience with these patients and realize just how profoundly active this compound really is.
And must this drug only be administered orally?
I don't know that it could be administered IV. Obviously, an oral formulation, when you give it twice daily, is an ideal formulation versus an IV or an intramuscular type of a formulation. So I don't think we would explore an IV formulation. I think we would want to keep it as an oral formulation because of the fact we dose twice daily with this drug. That's pretty common for this class of drugs. And of course, that allows a patient to take their medicine at home rather than consistently interacting with the clinic, having chair time at the clinic, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the oral formulation is the ideal setting. It's possible that we could work on a different IV formulation, but at the moment in the ovarian cancer indication, it's not necessarily a formulation that would be probably worth the effort to try to find.
And do you expect that the potential lawsuits and pending SEC filing to affect your cash position? Would this cause for you to fundraise still in 2025, or is the cash runway enough to make it to 2026?
So our projected cash runway to 2026 is including all of this. We have set out a conservative measure. And that being said, we do have a D&O insurance also that kicks in for these lawsuits.
Thank you. Well, that concludes the questions. And for the audience, thank you for all the great questions. And if you have additional questions or would like to be introduced to the Allarity team, everyone out there has my email address. Please reach out to me. I'll be happy to make that connection. In turn, they will have all of your information as well, and we'll be reaching out. And Thomas and Jeremy, I just want to turn it back over for any final words before we close out.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And yeah, thanks for all the great questions. You're paying attention. We always love that. I think we have a very exciting future ahead. Of course, it's always filled with challenges being in our space and sector. But that being said, we are very optimistic about what lays ahead for Allarity, and we will continue to work full steam to get this ship navigated optimally going forward.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Thomas.
Great job,
thank you,
guys.
Jeremy.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, and have a great day.